Good evening. Welcome back to Dining 101 with Mr. Wolfe. I'm your host. If you joined us last week, we were just getting into the whole place setting and kind of arriving and sitting at your table, and we kind of went over a lot of the basics. Real quick recap, we agreed no hats in the restaurant for men, especially at nighttime. We talked a little bit about perfume. You don't want to overdo it and obstruct with the wine and the food. We talked about sitting up straight, keeping both feet flat on the floor, keeping your elbows off the table at those critical junctures, which was when the food is being served, when you're being presented a menu, or when things are being cleared, or when the people are crumbing the table. So just pull back, assume what we call position number one, and then go ahead and relax afterwards. We talked a little bit about purses. Shouldn't really be on the floor, shouldn't really be on the table. Well, where do I put it, Mr. Wolfe? That's why you should buy one of my purse hooks. Hook it on the table so your purse is right there. It's handy. It's not on the floor, and it's not on the table. Everybody wins. I love America. It's a great country. What else? We talked about the banquet rule, the gal sitting in position one, the man always sits in position two. It's the gentlemanly thing to do. And then we talked about not a whole lot of crap on the table, like phones and cell phones and pagers. Who has a pager anymore? Hats, sunglasses, reading glasses, phones, cameras, small children, the like. What else? We talked a little bit about not bringing outside drinks in, no coffee, no water, no cocktails. I don't know what they do in New Orleans or Las Vegas, but most everywhere else you're not supposed to roll in already having a drink. Okay, let's get back into the setup here. Classic American setup, bread plate on your left, forks, knife, glasses on your right, because most people are right-handed. If you're lefty, you've probably dealt with this all your life and you're used to it. If you want to move the stuff over, that's fine. A really, really good, what I call Jedi waiters, will know who's left-handed, and a lot of times the tell is if you're wearing your watch on your other hand. A Jedi waiter will subtly move all your stuff in reverse mirror image, and that's when you know you're in the hands of a true professional. So look for that. I'll give you some other signs if you've got a jackass waiter or Jedi waiter here coming up on the setup, because it happens all the time. All right, back to the setup. We talked a little bit about the bread plate is for the bread and the butter, or maybe olive oil. It's not for your appetizer, it's not for your maraschino cherry stem, it's not for your olive pit, it's for bread and butter only. That's why they call it the bread and butter plate. So it's not going to come over here and your bread's not going to become your appetizer course or your amuse-bouche. Alright, it's going to stay right there. Alright, forks. We talked a little bit about the fork being really all you need. However, a lot of American restaurateurs like to put out that second fork. Again, they're trying to give you that subliminal message that you're supposed to order 2 courses, which is fine. I encourage it. Order 3, 4, 5 courses. I think it's great. But you don't have to. You can just order 1 course like you eat at home, your steak with your potatoes and your vegetables. Fine. Nobody's going to give you a hard time. You get your knife over here, turned inwards. Well, that seems kind of weird, Mr. Wolfe. Why is it turned in towards me? Maybe I'll cut myself. Maybe I should put it like that. Not so much. That might seem a little aggressive to your other guest at the tables. That seems pretty tricky, Mr. Wolfe. What do you think? Well, let's go back in history. In the olden days, before we even had forks at all, if you're going to go to a dinner party at your buddy's castle, a couple counties over, they didn't even have silverware at all. You would just roll in with your own knife, pull it off your belt, and that's pretty much what you ate with. The problem with that is after a few glasses of mead, sometimes the guests would use the knives on the other guests. Not such a good dinner party to attend. So little by little the host decided to provide their own knives that weren't quite as sharp as the knives the guests were bringing with them. So we had a knife. Then eventually we worked up to forks, which was kind of a big deal, and the French like to claim that they invented the fork, but truly it was Catherine de' Medici from Italy that brought the fork with her to France. So yeah, it was France technically, but we all know it was an Italian that invented it. And the fork is really invented to eat pasta. So now you have it. You got your fork, you got your knife. Water glass up here on the right. Don't want to mess around with that too much. You got a wine glass here, which really doesn't need to be there because we haven't determined yet if you're going to have wine or not with your meal. It'd be nice if you did, but you don't have to. Again, the American restaurateur is trying to give you a little subliminal message that, gee, wouldn't it be nice if you had some wine with your meal? I think it would. So again, these little subliminal messages hey, have 2 courses, hey, have some wine, hey, have a good time. A couple other little quick notes on silverware. If you're going to roll into a soup course, they're going to give you a soup spoon. It's going to go on your right because most people, again, are right-handed. Typically, you don't use a knife with soup, so you'll just eat over here. We can get more into dynamic soup later, but you never ever want to lift the bowl off the table, and you certainly don't want to slurp. In America, in Japan, that's a whole other story, and you really want to hold it like a fork, and you want to draw the soup away from you, and then eat it off the spoon and come back. And like I said, as much as you're enjoying the soup, you really don't want to do the whole tilt the bowl thing or slurp it up like this like you're at home. That'd be a whole other thing altogether. Let's say you're going to have oysters for a first course. I think that's a great idea. Your oyster fork is going to go on the right. Hey, that's kind of weird, Mr. Wolfe. Doesn't the fork go over here on the left? Well, yeah, it would if we're going to use a knife with it, but I doubt you're going to knife and fork your oyster unless your oyster is as big as a shoe, and that would be kind of gross. So your oyster fork is going to go over here on the right because, again, you're just going to use your right hand to help eat your oyster, and you're probably not going to use a knife with it. As far as oysters go, a couple rules of thumb. Have cocktail sauce if you like. I like mignonette. A little lemon could be nice, or you could just go all natural. Real true oyster aficionados like to just pick up the shell and slurp the oyster off of the shell, including all what's called the oyster liquor. That's all the liquid that's in there. That's the juice, and that's going to resonate the true beautiful flavor of that oyster, whether it's got a melon rind flavor or more metallic taste, or it tastes kind of cucumberish or just really salty. So anyway, that's what I would suggest. Why do you need the fork? Well, really good oyster shuckers will probably leave the oyster attached to the shell on that one half shell, and that lets you know that it's a fresh oyster and it's been shucked to order, and it's not like a jarred oyster that they just flopped in a used oyster shell they had laying around. So it's the chef, it's a matter of pride. He's letting you know it's a fresh oyster, it's shucked to order. So you take your fork, dislodge the oyster from the bottom of the shell, and then slurp away. Great. What do I do with my shell when I'm done? Maybe I should just flip it on my bread plate. No, we already covered that. The bread is for the bread plate only. You want to take your oyster shell, invert it, make it upside down, and put it back right where you got it. That way when you eat your, let's say it's a half dozen oysters, one by one you're going to go around. I don't care if you go clockwise, counterclockwise, or whatever, it doesn't really matter at this point, but just put the oyster shell upside down back where you got it on the ice, on the hubcap, or whatever they chose to serve the oysters on. That lets your dining companions know that that oyster's already been consumed, and they're not going to go fishing around in there. If you leave it right side up, it's a little, in a dark lit restaurant, you've had a beer or two, it's kind of hard to tell if there's an oyster in there or not. If it's upside down, easier to tell. Also, it'll be easier for the busboy or whoever needs to clear that will know, oh, those are all upside down, he's done with the oysters, and they can just whisk it away. Now, if you put them all on the bread plate, that means they've got to whisk that away, and then they got to bring in a new bread plate, and chaos ensues. So that's the way to do that. All right, we're almost running out of time for this next segment. I want to see real quick if there's anything else we can talk about. I guess we could go back to the menu real quick, because I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. It depends if it's a folding menu or not, but this is critical, and this is kind of the beginning of the dining juncture. Again, you might be on an important date, it could be a really important business thing. Above all, I don't think anybody wants to look like a jackass, but here's the rule of thumb that it appears a lot of people forgot. When you're browsing the menu, you're selecting what you want to have, great. If you leave your menu open, that tells the waiter that either you're still deciding what to have or you have a question. Now, once you've closed your menu, that means you've made your selections, and the waiter will come to your table and take your order. Now, if you sit there with your menu order, the waiter's going to keep doing other stuff and have other priorities, and he's going to assume that you haven't made up your mind. And you're going to start wondering, well, where the hell is the goddamn waiter? Well, that's because it looks like you haven't made up your mind. So my suggestion is close the menu. There's a little trick here. Let's say you have a question, you want the waiter to come over, simply close the menu, they'll come over, he'll probably say something like, do you have any questions concerning the dinner menu? And at which point you can say, yeah, I was kind of halfway between the scallops and the chicken, what do you think? Or, whatever you want to go with. Anyway, that's my recommendation on the menu, is fold it when you're ready to order. If you have a large party of 6 and maybe 4 people have the menu shut and 2 don't, that means everybody's not ready to order, so the waiter's not going to come. So you might want to gently remind your dining companions to, have they decided, oh, that's great, why don't you shut the menu so the waiter will come over and take an order. So that's pretty much it. We've reviewed last week, we've done this week. Next week we'll kind of move into the whole appetizer salad soup thing, and then hopefully we'll get into the entrees after that, and then we'll have some fun with cheese and dessert and whatnot. Until then, thanks for joining us at Dining 101. It's the companion webisode to dining101.net, which I strongly encourage you to go check out. I'm your host, Mr. Wolfe. Cheers. Dine well, dine right.